Over here.
A talking gnome?
Let's play a game.
A talking gnome?
Don't you hate when people bump your player board?
well, yeah.
I have magnets.
Magnets? Gnome Hollow is a cute little tile placement game for 2 to 4 players. I don't really know why I use the word little because this game is actually quite the table hog. The game does begin with just this modest little garden tile in the center of the table. However, players will be adding tiles to this, making a huge garden by the end of the game. And while the game is beautiful and cute, it can get just a hair mean, just a little bit, but sometimes mean is good and fun. And the game, while it's not technically a market manipulation game, does have kind of that similar feeling to it. More on that in just a bit. Each player has their own player board, which is magnetized or has metal or something in it because your pieces stick to the board. And you can even bend it, you can turn it upside down. It's actually really cool, and I don't see why more games use this. I don't know if it costs a ton of money or something. I don't know. All I know is it's fantastic. I don't know if those are magnets inside of those. Oh, so those are magnets inside of those. So I don't know if this has like another magnet or if it's metal inside. Do I dare pull it apart? No. Magnets. If you're familiar with the channel, no one knows how they work. And the goal of the game is to amass the most points by the end of the game. And that is roughly when this gigantic bag no longer has tiles in it. Review copy provided by the publisher, and Marcy May here thinks you should click the subscribe button. Players will be placing garden tiles from the garden tile board, and they'll be placing them into the communal garden that's in the center of the table, trying to complete loops or circles or rings of the tiny white mushrooms. And when placing these, the tile has to make sense. So it can be like mushroom path on mushroom path, or grass on grass. However, there can't be a side that's mushroom path touching grass because that doesn't make any sense. Why would you even think that you could do that? But once a path has been completed, that path then produces the mushrooms that are pictured on the path. In this case, a red, a purple, a thing that looks like a cheeseburger, and a pink mushroom. And once a player completes a path, they move one of their ring markers down below here. And you want to move those ring markers down because those will score you points at the end of the game, depending on how many ring markers you've moved. So you count up the number of tiles that created that loop. In this instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles. And I would then slide my ring marker down underneath this 5 section. And when you move these, most of the time you will get a bonus. This bonus here allows you to place a signpost. These here allow you to draw an extra tile from the bag and add it to your personal reserve. This here lets you collect a flower that you don't already have. This here lets you get 2 more mushrooms. However, it does have to be 2 of the mushrooms that you collected this turn. So during a player's turn, they must place 2 garden tiles from the garden tile board. There are instances when players can have tiles in reserve. They can only have up to 2 tiles in reserve, but they could also play 1 or 2 of their reserve tiles as well. So technically you could play up to 4 tiles during a turn. However, that's kind of rare. Then once a player has played their mandatory 2 garden tiles from the garden tile board, they may then take 1 gnome action, which they can take 1 of their gnomes and do 1 of 4 things. They may move 1 of their gnomes to an unclaimed path on the garden. So this is a great opportunity to maybe claim a garden to begin working and building on creating your own circle. Or if by some chance there happens to be one already out there that's completed, you may place your gnome there to snipe those mushrooms and add them to your collection. And the reason that you want these mushrooms and a way that you will score roughly a third of your points is one of the other gnome actions that you can do is you can go to the pinwheel in the center of the garden. That allows you to sell mushrooms at the market. And players will be able to sell up to 2 different transactions, mushrooms to the market. And when selling mushrooms to the market, you receive the value that is printed on the board. For instance, if I sold 4 blue mushrooms, I would get 5 victory points. And when I sell those mushrooms to the market, I put one of these tokens blocking that space. Now no one else for the rest of the game can sell exactly 4 blue mushrooms. They would have to sell 6, 7, 8 blue mushrooms, or they could only sell 3 or 2 mushrooms. So there's kind of a race aspect to selling mushrooms. And then there's kind of like a push and a pull, like Do you want to get small collections of mushrooms and make small little transactions and fill in the spaces on the board real quick? Because once those tiles run out for a specific color, no one can sell that color mushroom anymore. Well, that's not entirely true. They can always sell a pair of mushrooms for these really low point values down there. Another action you can take with your gnome is to send them to the flower shop. Because throughout the game, once players move their 2nd, 4th, and 6th ring marker, they will be getting these flower space. And these tiles are wild. They work wherever you place them. And they can greatly help you complete those tough circles that maybe another player has built an adjacent circle next to it, and maybe it's tough to find a piece that you can legally place there. These will help you out quite a bit. And those go into your personal reserve. And those are the tiles that you can use in addition to the 2 tiles that you would normally place during your turn. Once you get one of these tiles, you also get the matching colored flower. And just like the ring markers that you remove to get the printed victory points beside them, the same thing with the flowers. And then the balance of the flowers do go to the market. So now that flower has been unlocked, allowing the other players to send their gnome to the flower shop to get that flower. And you can only have 1 of each color flower. So you can't have 2 or 3 green flowers. You can only have 1 green flower, which keeps the players from spamming the flower shop and just taking all the flowers as soon as they become available. And the last thing that you can do with your gnome is you can send them to a signpost. There are these signposts that players can get from some of the perk spaces when they move their ring markers. And when a player chooses that bonus, they get what's printed on the sign marker, and then they put it on the ring that was completed that allowed them to get that. Now that becomes kind of like a worker placement space. Now players can then move their gnome to that signpost and get what's printed on. And at the end of the game, players tally up victory points depending on how many flowers they collected, depending on how many ring markers they've moved, and how many points they've accumulated from selling mushrooms at the market. And the player with the most victory points is the winner of Gnome Hollow. Let's go! The OP has been on an absolute hot streak with their games lately, and Gnome Hollow is no exception. It's pretty, it's easy to teach, and most importantly, it is fun. I really appreciate the race aspect of it. We were trying to collect those mushrooms and hopefully sell them before your opponents can, because once those tokens run out, you can no longer sell, or at least you can't sell larger quantities of those mushrooms at a time. So if you had a whole bunch of yellows and somebody sold the last available batch of yellows and you can only sell 2 yellows at a time, only getting a couple points each time you take the market action, that really can hurt you. And no, that doesn't totally screw them over completely, but it can make them have to alter what they're trying to do. And when you first start playing the game, you're thinking, oh, you know, everybody's just gonna build their own little circle and I'll put my gnome on it and claim it and I'll get the mushrooms, which is partially true. However, about halfway through the game, or about 2/3 of the way, you start realizing that your 2 gnomes really isn't enough gnomes, and you kind of wish that you had more of them, because you have to be able to move them in order to take an action. So if you move one to the pinwheel to sell at the market, at best you could move the other one there to sell at the market next turn, but now you have both of them there and you have to move them to a new location to be able to take that action. So now you have 2 of them tied up in the pinwheel, you have no circles claimed, and maybe you want to send one off to collect a flower. But it ends up being kind of a small logistical puzzle, a little more puzzly than I anticipated going into the game. So I really enjoy that. While the game is simple, there are some decisions that can be made in different angles that you can kind of work things, and different strategies that you can take. While it's not, you know, the most strategic game ever made, because you are simply laying 2 tiles each turn, there is enough meat here to keep seasoned gamers interested in the game, and for quite a few plays too. I was kind of surprised that my desire to play this game really never weaned down any after plays. Like I would still play the game right now. I did not anticipate it to have as much replay value as I found it to have. So, I mean, that's obviously a great thing. And sometimes the game can kind of take sort of a mean turn. You may intentionally start placing tiles maybe adjacent to another player's, making it difficult for them to find a piece, or maybe even impossible, find a piece that they can legally place to continue their current path that they've claimed or that they've been working on. So let's take a moment from gushing all over this game. Let's go over some things that kind of suck a little bit. The game is an absolute table hog. It takes up a ton of space. So be prepared to have plenty of room for that garden that will just grow insanely large, especially in a 4-player game. And speaking of a 4-player game, I feel like sometimes in a 4-player game, there is a little more downtime than I would like in a game that feels like it should have really quick turns because you're only placing 2 tiles, but maybe they completed a ring, so then they're collecting mushrooms, then they're moving their ring marker down, and then they got a bonus of a signpost, and they choose what signpost to pick, and then that's going to give them, so it is kind of cool that it's somewhat combo-tastic or, cascading turns. However, I didn't find it ideal that in a 4-player game, if 2 players or 3 players have big turns like that, then it comes back around to you, and you just happen to be at a point in your game where you're like, well, I'm just going to lay these 2 tiles and that's my turn. And then you wait for the other players to take their turn, which hopefully they're in a cycle where, their turns go real quick too. So I did find a 4-player game to have a little more downtime than I like. A 2-player game was slightly less exciting than I hoped it would be. And like a lot of games, this game really shines at 3 players. So 3-player, to me, I found to be the best player count for this game. And I don't really know if this is a downside or not, but I did find that collecting the flowers did seem kind of easy because you can just go to the flower shop and get flowers, but you do have to wait until players unlock them. So yes, it does behoove you to complete the rings quicker to be able to move your ring markers down to unlock those flowers. Not just for the sake of unlocking them, but you do gain a flower of that color, which saves you having to move your gnome to the flower shop to get the flower, but it also gives you that wild tile. And those wild tiles can come in handy when trying to complete a ring. So many games I did find that most players did collect all the flowers, or at least pretty close to it. But with that being said, most of the games that I've played, the scores have been pretty close. They're usually within 10 points of each other, like the last player to the winner, just a 10-point gap there. That's really all the negative stuff I can think about it. I mean, the game is gorgeous. And I believe the artist was also the designer, which is pretty neat because that's kind of rare that someone's good at both of those. A lot of people think they are, but they aren't. The production value on the game, the op did an amazing job. The magnetic boards, I wish every game would have these magnetic boards. It is so convenient, and it's nice too because you can just slide them. I think that's even better than dual layered boards because then you gotta like pick up your piece and move it, and dual layer boards aren't 100% shockproof. I mean, they're pretty close, but the magnets, I just absolutely love the magnets in this game. And although the wooden pieces are amazing as well, the meeples, they're screen printed both sides, such cute little wooden signposts. All the cardboard components are nice thick cardboard as well. It's just kind of what you would expect from like a top production pushed, just a little extra there. And the insert for the box is great. All the different compartments kind of have like a little label indented in the bottom of the insert, so that way you know, well, this is where the victory points go, this is where the gnomes go, these are where the mushrooms go. Excellent use of the size of the box. Comes with 4 player aids. You gotta love that. I just really enjoyed this game. As of now, I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. Definitely staying in my collection. Really enjoy it. I'm curious, and I may revisit this to see if my rating will change, only because I'm still just kind of shocked at how much I enjoy this game, especially at 3-player. And that is Gnome Hollow. Definitely check this one out. And don't leave just yet. Stick around. Click on here to watch another review of a different OP game. Not sure which one. Maybe Perfect Wave. Perfect Wave is criminally underrated. Let's put Perfect Wave here. The Perfect Wave? I think it's the Perfect Wave. I'm stupid. Players will be placing these garden tiles from the garden tiles. Players will be placing these garden tiles from. What are you called? 3. Garden tile board. That makes sense.